Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Picture this. You're waiting for your coffee, just standing there for 30 seconds, and suddenly your hand is fishing around in your pocket. Before you even realize what you're doing, your thumb is dancing across your screen. Scroll, tap, refresh. Then you snap out of it and think, wait, I wasn't even bored. You were just uncomfortable with the silence in your own head for half a minute. Back in 2016, a writer named Andrew Sullivan, this guy was basically internet royalty, one of the original blogging pioneers, wrote this gut punch of an essay in New York Magazine. The title alone hits hard. I used to be a human being. He described becoming what he called a, quote, manic information addict, drowning in an endless tsunami of news, gossip, and images. It broke him, he said. And here's the kicker. It might be breaking you too. That nagging feeling, that sense that the very tools designed to connect us are somehow stealing something essential from us. That's exactly what we're diving into today. Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism isn't your typical 10 tips to use your phone less kind of book. It's way deeper than that. It's a meticulously researched, surprisingly hopeful roadmap for taking your life back from the forces hell-bent on stealing every second of your attention. Here's what makes Cal Newport such a fascinating guide. The man's a computer science professor at Georgetown University. He literally teaches cutting-edge technology for a living. But get this, he's never had a Facebook account, never touched Twitter or Instagram, not once. He's not some bitter technophobe ranting from a cabin in the woods. He's an insider who's simply decided to use technology on his own terms, not Silicon Valley's. This book has sold hundreds of thousands of copies and been translated into dozens of languages because it taps into something we're all feeling. We've lost control. We're exhausted, anxious, constantly distracted, and somewhere deep down we know our devices are the culprits. So what if you could flip the script? What if you could completely transform your relationship with technology, not by ditching it entirely, but by actually mastering it? By the time we're done today, you'll understand the sneaky psychology that makes your devices so ridiculously addictive, and you'll have a concrete, step-by-step blueprint to rebuild your digital life from scratch, one based on what actually matters to you, not what matters to tech company shareholders. This isn't about becoming a digital hermit. It's about learning to live better with less. Let's kick things off with an uncomfortable question. Do you remember agreeing to check your phone 85 times a day? Did you sign some contract promising to spend nearly 2 hours daily on social media and messaging? Of course not. Nobody did. Yet somehow, here we are. We didn't sign up for this reality. We just kind of sleepwalked into it. Think back to the beginning. When Facebook launched in 2004, it was basically a digital yearbook. The killer feature? Finding out who your friends were dating. When Steve Jobs unveiled the first iPhone in 2007, most of his presentation was about how it was a really good iPod that could also make calls. Making calls was the killer app. There was no app store, no notifications, no infinite scroll. We adopted these tools for tiny, practical reasons. We wanted to see our cousins' baby photos from across the country. We didn't want to carry both a phone and an iPod. But somehow, these minor conveniences quietly colonized the center of our entire lives. We woke up one day living in a state of constant, frenzied distraction, feeling this deep unease. Not because these tools are useless, but because we'd lost our autonomy. So how did this happen? Here's the truth. It's not because you're weak-willed. You've been fighting a massively lopsided arms race you didn't even know existed. In 2017, Bill Maher looked straight into the camera and said something that sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. He said tech leaders need to stop pretending they're friendly nerd gods building a better world and admit they're just tobacco farmers in t-shirts selling an addictive product to children. Harsh? Maybe. But it was based on confessions from Silicon Valley insiders who'd started blowing the whistle. People like Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, who held up a smartphone on 60 Minutes and called it, quote, a slot machine. Every time you check your phone, you're pulling the lever to see what you got. Did someone like your post? New follower, new email. The rewards are unpredictable, and that unpredictability is the secret ingredient of addiction. It triggers dopamine release in your brain, the same neurochemical involved in cravings. This isn't an accident or side effect. It's a deliberate design choice. It's called intermittent positive reinforcement, and app designers use it specifically to keep you coming back. Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, actually admitted this. The whole thought process behind building these apps, he said, was, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? To do that, they needed to give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while. It's a social validation feedback loop, he explained, built by deliberately exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. There's a second force at work, too, our deep, primal need for social approval. For our ancestors in tribes, social acceptance was literally life or death. Our brains are hardwired to obsess over what others think of us. Tech companies have weaponized this instinct. Getting a like on Instagram feels like the tribe showing approval. Not getting feedback feels like a threat. So we feel this urgent need to constantly monitor our social standing, checking and rechecking. If you feel like you've lost control over your technology, it's not your fault. You're not lazy or undisciplined. You're up against a multi-billion-dollar industry actively working to undermine your autonomy. Billions have been invested to make your current outcome inevitable. Faced with this reality, what do most of us try? Little hacks. We turn off notifications. We declare digital Sabbath on Sundays. We promise to be more mindful. But Cal Newport argues these tiny tweaks are like bailing out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. They're nowhere near enough. The forces against us are too powerful for piecemeal solutions. What we need isn't a new set of tips. It's an entirely new philosophy. A philosophy he calls digital minimalism. Digital minimalism is defined as a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value, and then happily miss out on everything else. Let that phrase sink in for a moment. Happily miss out on everything else. This completely flips the default mindset most of us have, which is basically digital maximalism. The maximalist lives in constant fear of missing out. They believe any potential benefit, no matter how tiny, justifies adopting a new technology. They ask, what if I miss something important? The minimalist asks a different question. Is this the best way to support my values? A minimalist doesn't just look at an app's benefits, they look at its costs. And the primary cost, Newport reminds us, is our life itself. He draws on Henry David Thoreau, who famously wrote, "The cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life which is required to be exchanged for it." If you spend 10 hours a week on Twitter, you need to ask yourself, are the occasional interesting links and connections worth 10 hours of your life? Or could you get similar benefits by attending one interesting talk a month and chatting with 3 new people? That would only cost a few hours, leaving you with a surplus to invest in things that truly matter. Digital minimalists aren't afraid of missing small things, because they're terrified of diminishing the big things they know for sure make life good. So what does this actually look like? Newport shares real stories of people who've embraced this philosophy. There's Tyler, who quit all social media. A year later, he was exercising regularly, reading 3 to 4 books monthly, learning ukulele, and was closer than ever to his wife and kids. He even got promoted at work. There's Adam, a small business owner worried about the example he was setting for his kids, who ditched his smartphone for a basic flip phone. Sure, texting got harder, but teaching his kids that life exists beyond a screen mattered way more than typing speed. And it's not always about quitting entirely. It's about being intentional. Minimalists master optimization. They strip away distracting features to extract pure value. For example, Karina, a student who needed Facebook for her organization's group, unfriended everyone except the 14 people on her council. Now her newsfeed is empty. She can coordinate through the group without getting sucked into the platform's attention traps. This is the core philosophy, working backward from your deepest values to your technology choices, transforming these tools from sources of distraction into support systems for a life well lived. So how do you actually become a digital minimalist? You can't just dip your toe in. Newport recommends a radical, rapid transformation, a process he calls the digital declutter. The digital declutter is a 30-day reset. Here's how it works. First, you designate a 30-day period where you take a break from all optional technologies. Optional means any technology whose temporary removal won't cause real harm or significantly disrupt your professional or personal life. You can't stop checking work email, but social media, news websites, video games, streaming services, for most people, these are optional. The goal is to be aggressive. Don't confuse convenient with critical. Yes, living without Facebook for a month might be inconvenient, but it's unlikely to cause genuine harm. The second step, and this is crucial, is using this 30-day break to rediscover what you actually enjoy doing. This isn't about sitting around feeling bored. It's about actively exploring high-quality alternatives to digital distraction. You have to fill the void. Take walks, read books, learn an instrument, volunteer, have actual conversations with friends. Finally, at the end of 30 days, you reintroduce technology from a completely blank slate. For each technology you consider bringing back, ask 3 questions. 1. Does this technology serve something I deeply value? Not, does it offer some benefit, but does it serve a deep value? 2. Is this technology the best way to serve this value? Maybe Instagram helps you keep up with your cousin's baby, but is it the best way? Or would a monthly phone call be far more meaningful? 3. If it passes those 2 tests, how will I use this technology to maximize its value and minimize its harm? This means setting strict rules, like only checking Facebook on your computer on Saturday mornings. Newport ran an experiment with over 1,600 people who went through this process. The results were transformative. People were shocked at how much of their digital life was just reflexive, compulsive behavior. When they emerged on the other side, they had streamlined, intentional digital lives that felt, as they put it, right. But this transformation goes deeper than cleaning up your phone's home screen. It forces you to rebuild the foundations of your life. The rest of the book explores practices that help you build a sustainable minimalist lifestyle, focusing on 3 key areas: solitude, relationships, and leisure. Let's start with solitude. In the summers of the 1860s, during the darkest days of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln would escape the chaos of the White House. He'd commute by horseback to a quiet Gothic cottage on a hill overlooking Washington. The White House was a whirlwind of duty and distraction, with visitors constantly camped outside his door. But the cottage offered something priceless: time and space to think. It was here, often alone, that he wrestled with the Emancipation Proclamation and refined the words that became the Gettysburg Address. We can say, with only slight exaggeration, that solitude helped save the nation. Newport argues, we all need regular doses of solitude. But he offers a precise definition. Solitude isn't about being physically alone, it's about being free from input from other minds. You can be in a crowded coffee shop and experience solitude, as long as your mind is alone with its own thoughts. But you can be in a quiet room and have solitude banished by a quick glance at your phone. Why is this so important? Because it's in these moments that we clarify hard problems, regulate our emotions, and build moral courage. It's where we come to understand ourselves. The problem is, for the first time in human history, it's possible to completely banish solitude from our lives. That little device in our pocket is a constant portal to other minds. At the slightest hint of boredom, we can pull it out and get a satisfying dose of distraction. Newport calls this state solitude deprivation, and it's having devastating consequences. He points to psychologist Jean Twenge's work, studying generational trends for decades. Around 2012, she noticed a terrifying, sudden spike in teen depression, anxiety, and suicide rates. The timing matched exactly when smartphone ownership became ubiquitous among young people. This generation, the first to grow up constantly connected, is facing the worst mental health crisis in decades. When you eliminate solitude, you lose the ability to process and make sense of your own emotions. Simply put, humans aren't wired to be constantly wired. So what can we do? We need to intentionally inject solitude back into our lives. Newport suggests simple but powerful practices. Try leaving your phone at home sometimes. You'll realize the urgency you feel to always have it is mostly an illusion. Take long walks alone, without headphones. Nietzsche once wrote, "Only thoughts reached by walking have value." Walking is a fantastic source of solitude. Or try writing letters to yourself in a journal. The act of writing forces you to organize your thoughts and gain clarity. The second pillar of minimalist life is reclaiming real human connection. Aristotle famously said that man is a social animal. Modern neuroscience has proven him right in ways he couldn't have imagined. Our brains, when at rest, default to thinking about our social lives. We're wired for rich, complex face-to-face interaction. We process floods of information from body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. The problem with most digital communication, texts, comments, likes, is that it's a very low bandwidth, stripped-down version of what our brains evolved to handle. MIT professor Sherry Turkle calls this connection as opposed to conversation. She says face-to-face conversation is the most humanizing thing we do. It's where we learn empathy. The danger is we're replacing high-value conversation with low-value connection. Studies reveal a tragic paradox. The more time people spend connecting on social media, the lonelier they feel. The tiny boost from a like cannot compensate for the huge loss from no longer spending real time with that friend. Newport proposes a radical philosophy, conversation-centric communication. It argues that real conversation, face-to-face or on the phone, is the only form of interaction that truly counts toward maintaining a relationship. Everything else, like texting and social media, is just for logistics, setting up conversations or sharing practical information. This requires a fundamental shift. You have to stop clicking like. Stop leaving shallow comments like, "So cool." These trivial interactions teach your brain that connection is a reasonable substitute for conversation. If a friendship is important, let the desire to comment on a baby picture motivate you to actually call or visit. He also suggests consolidating your texting. Keep your phone on Do Not Disturb by default, and check messages at scheduled times, like email. This makes you less available for meandering, low-quality text chats, which paradoxically strengthens relationships by motivating you and your friends to seek out real conversation to fill the void. The final pillar is reclaiming leisure. Aristotle argued that a good life requires activities that serve no other purpose than the joy of the activity itself. Newport calls this high-quality leisure. The problem today is we have a void where these activities used to be. We fill that void with the easiest, lowest quality option available, our screens. Mindless swiping and tapping becomes our default way to pass time. To succeed as a minimalist, you must replace this digital noise with something better. He offers 3 lessons for high-quality leisure. Lesson 1. Prioritize demanding activity over passive consumption. He points to people in the financial independence movement, like Mr. Money Mustache, who, with endless free time, choose to spend it on strenuous projects like building and renovating. This is the Bennett principle, named after Arnold Bennett, who argued that expending energy in your leisure time can actually leave you feeling more energized, not less. Lesson 2. Use skills to produce valuable things in the physical world. This is the world of craft. Whether it's knitting a sweater, fixing an engine, or playing guitar, Applying skill to create something tangible provides deep, primal satisfaction that a screen cannot replicate. It gives you an unambiguous source of self-worth. You can simply point and say, "I made that." Lesson 3. Seek activities requiring real-world, structured social interactions. Think of the explosive popularity of board game cafes, CrossFit boxes, and volunteer groups. These activities provide structure, rules, goals, insider jargon that paradoxically enables richer, more intense, and more satisfying social experiences. Putting all of this together, embracing solitude, prioritizing conversation, and cultivating high-quality leisure is an act of resistance. It's a declaration that your time and attention are your own. The business model of the attention economy is simple. Your time equals their money. Facebook, Google, and others are in a race to extract as many minutes of your life as possible. To win this fight, you have to be strategic. Newport offers a final set of practices for what he calls the attention resistance. Delete social media apps from your phone. You can still access them on a computer, but this eliminates the primary tool for compulsive use. Turn your general-purpose devices into single-purpose tools. Use apps like Freedom to block distracting websites by default, only allowing access during scheduled times. And finally, consider the ultimate act of resistance: dumbing down your smartphone. More people are trading iPhones for basic phones that only handle calls and texts. They report feeling less anxious, more present, and happier. This journey into digital minimalism isn't about rejecting technology. It's about rejecting the idea that new is always better and that convenience is the most important value. It's about remembering that our tools are supposed to serve us, not the other way around. It's a return to a more human way of living, one where we're in control, where our days are shaped by our deepest values, and where we have space to think, to connect, and to create. It's about being able to say with confidence, "Because of how I use technology, I'm a better human being than I ever was before." As we step back and look at the ideas in digital minimalism, what strikes me most is how deeply humane this book is. In a world that often feels like it's spinning faster and faster, driven by algorithms we don't understand, Cal Newport offers a way to slow down and catch our breath. He gives us permission to be intentional, to choose depth over distraction. The most powerful lesson for me is the mindset shift from "what am I missing out on" to "what am I building?" The default internet culture is one of passive consumption. We scroll, we watch, we react, we consume other people's lives, the outrage of the day, the endless content stream. It leaves us feeling empty because, at the end of the day, we haven't actually done anything. Minimalism is a philosophy of action and creation. It asks you to be the architect of your own life, to decide what truly matters, and then use your time and energy to build that life. The joy you get from learning a new song on guitar, from having a deep conversation with an old friend, or from spending an afternoon in quiet contemplation. These are rewards that no amount of likes or retweets can ever match. They're real, they're lasting, and they belong to you. The book is also a powerful reminder that our brains aren't infinitely flexible. We're biological beings with needs shaped over millions of years. We need solitude. We need real face-to-face social connection. We need the satisfaction of using our hands to create things. When we ignore these needs, we suffer. Much of modern life's anxiety and unease comes from this profound mismatch between what we are and how we're living. So how can you start putting these ideas into practice today, right now? You don't have to throw your smartphone in a river. Start small. First, try this simple experiment this weekend. Pick a 3-hour block and leave your phone at home, turned off. Go for a walk, read a book in a park, or just sit and think. Notice the urge to check your phone. Notice how it feels when that urge passes and your mind settles. That's the feeling you're trying to cultivate. Second, pick one person you care about who you usually text with. This week, call them instead. Have a real conversation with no agenda. Just talk. See how different it feels. Finally, think of one small, tangible thing you can create with your hands this month. It could be as simple as trying a new recipe, building a small bookshelf, or planting a garden. Dedicate a few hours to it and experience the unique pride that comes from making something real. These small acts are the beginning of a revolution, a quiet, personal revolution against the forces of distraction. They're the first steps on the path to a more focused, more intentional, and ultimately, a more human life. That was a summary of Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. We've certainly hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest, a summary can only ever be a map. The real magic happens when you walk the path yourself. It's in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or simple phrase resonates in a way you didn't expect. This overview is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your precious time. If anything we've discussed today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning new ideas. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see yourself and the world around you. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.